The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, which seems fitting now. Tuesdays have always been the forgotten day, not quite the fresh start of Monday, nowhere near the promise of Friday. Tuesdays are when the world slides its cruelty under your door and hopes you won't notice until it's too late. I noticed. My name is Catherine Mercer, and for 23 years, I was a structural engineer. I designed the bones of buildings, the invisible architecture that kept hospitals standing, schools safe, bridges suspended over rivers that had been flowing since before humans walked their banks. I understood load-bearing walls and stress distribution. I knew how to calculate exactly how much weight a foundation could carry before it cracked. I never thought to apply those calculations to myself. The pain started in my hands first. Small tremors when I held my coffee cup, a weakness in my grip that I attributed to too many hours at the drafting table. Then it spread, fingers that wouldn't close properly, wrists that screamed when I tried to rotate them, shoulders that felt like they'd been filled with ground glass. My doctor sent me to a specialist. The specialist sent me to another specialist. The second specialist sent me for tests, MRIs, nerve conduction studies, blood panels that measured things I couldn't pronounce. The diagnosis came wrapped in clinical language: severe peripheral neuropathy with secondary inflammatory arthritis, compounded by early-onset degenerative disc disease. In plain terms, my nervous system was attacking my joints, my spine was deteriorating, and my hands, those precise instruments that had sketched blueprints for structures that would outlast me, were slowly becoming strangers attached to my wrists. I was 46 years old. I had paid into my long-term disability insurance for 19 years through my employer. I had never filed a claim for anything. I had never taken more than my allotted sick days. I had been, in every measurable way, the ideal policyholder. None of that mattered to Meridian Insurance Corporation. The letter in my hands was 3 pages long, printed on heavy stock paper with a watermark I could see when I held it up to the light streaming through my kitchen window. I'd been holding it there for nearly 10 minutes, watching the morning sun illuminate the corporate seal, like some kind of bitter communion wafer. "Dear Miss Mercer," it began, and already I could feel the distance in those words, the calculated formality of an entity that had never intended to honor its promises. After thorough review of your claim submission dated March 15th, including all attached medical documentation, physician statements, and supporting materials, Meridian Insurance Corporation has determined that your claim does not meet the criteria for long-term disability benefits as outlined in policy number LTD 4471829. I kept reading. My eyes moved over the words, but my brain was having trouble accepting their meaning, like trying to hear someone speak underwater. Our medical review team, consisting of board-certified physicians, has concluded that the documentation provided does not sufficiently establish a disability that prevents you from performing the essential functions of your occupation or any occupation for which you are reasonably qualified by education, training, or experience. There it was, the knife, slipped between my ribs with corporate precision. But they weren't finished. The letter continued. And this is where the cruelty graduated from institutional to personal. Additionally, surveillance conducted between February 3rd and February 28th indicates activity levels inconsistent with your claim limitations. Video documentation shows you carrying grocery bags, walking without assistive devices, and operating a motor vehicle, activities that contradict your reported inability to perform work-related tasks. They had been watching me for an entire month while I was scheduling doctor's appointments and filling out their endless forms and hoping, that this company I'd paid thousands of dollars to over nearly 2 decades might help me. They had been filming me through car windows and telephoto lenses. They had watched me carry a single bag of groceries from my car to my house, a distance of maybe 30 feet. And they had used that footage to call me a fraud. They had documented me walking to my mailbox without a cane on a good day. One of those precious days when the inflammation was manageable enough that I could pretend for a few hours that my body wasn't betraying me. They had weaponized my hope against me. The letter's final paragraph was the most devastating. Based on our comprehensive evaluation, your claim has been denied. Our findings indicate that the degree of disability claimed is not supported by objective medical evidence and is inconsistent with observed functional capacity. If you wish to appeal this decision, you must submit your appeal in writing within 180 days of this notice. I read that paragraph 4 times before I understood what it was really saying. They weren't just denying my claim. They were calling me a liar. The envelope also contained a second document, A thick packet with a yellow cover sheet labeled Independent Medical Examination Summary. I hadn't attended any independent medical examination. I hadn't even been asked to attend one. But here was a 12-page report signed by a Dr. Lawrence Pittman, whose credentials included board certifications in internal medicine and occupational health, analyzing my condition and concluding that I was capable of sedentary to light work with minimal accommodations. Dr. Lawrence Pittman had never examined me. He had never spoken to me. He had never watched me try to button my own blouse on a bad morning, or seen the way I had to hold my coffee cup with both hands because one hand alone couldn't be trusted. He had reviewed my medical records from the comfort of his office, or more likely, his home, given the assembly line nature of insurance medical reviews, and he had concluded, without ever meeting me, that I was exaggerating my symptoms, that I was faking. I set the papers down on my kitchen table and looked at my hands. They were trembling again, not from emotion, though there was plenty of that, but from the neuropathy that made them shake whenever I held them in one position for too long. The tremor was visible, obvious, undeniable, and yet, somehow, deniable. I thought about all the things I used to be able to do. I thought about the blueprint I'd designed for the Harriman Medical Center, a 7-story facility with a pediatric wing that required structural accommodations I'd spent 3 months perfecting. I thought about the bridge reinforcement project in Cascade County, where I'd calculated stress tolerances that would keep the structure safe for the next 100 years. I thought about the schools, the libraries, the apartment buildings, all the spaces where people lived and worked and healed, held up by frameworks I'd imagined and made real. I couldn't hold a drafting pencil anymore. Not for more than 10 minutes. Not without my hand cramping so severely that I'd drop it. But according to Meridian Insurance Corporation, I was faking. The first person I called was my doctor, Elena Vasquez, who had been treating me for 2 years and had submitted detailed documentation of my condition along with my claim. She was livid, professionally livid, the kind of controlled anger that physicians learn to master. They didn't request any additional information from me, she said over the phone, her voice tight. They didn't ask for clarification on any of my findings. They just denied it. They had me under surveillance, I told her, for a month. There was a pause. Then, Catherine, that's predatory. That's not a review process. That's a hunting expedition. I appreciated her outrage. It felt like validation in a world that had suddenly decided my pain wasn't real. But appreciation doesn't pay rent. It doesn't cover the medications that cost $300 a month. It doesn't replace the income that had simply stopped when I could no longer work. What do I do now? I asked. You appeal, she said. And you get a lawyer, a good one, someone who specializes in this. I had never hired a lawyer for anything in my life. My divorce, 15 years earlier, had been amicable enough that we'd used a mediator. My will was a simple document I downloaded from a legal website. The idea of navigating the legal system while my body was systematically failing me felt overwhelming. One more weight added to a load I was already struggling to carry, but I didn't have a choice. I spent the next week researching. My laptop became a portal into a world I'd never known existed. A world of insurance bad faith, ERISA regulations, claims management protocols, and something called independent medical examinations that were, as I quickly learned, neither independent nor genuine examinations. I learned that Meridian Insurance Corporation had been sued 17 times in the past 5 years for wrongful claim denial. I learned that Dr. Lawrence Pittman, the physician who had reviewed my records without ever meeting me, had conducted over 4,000 insurance reviews in the past 12 months alone, an average of more than 10 per day, which meant he was spending less than an hour on each case, including mine. I learned that surveillance was a standard tool in the disability claim denial playbook, used to find any footage that could be twisted into evidence of fraud. I learned that I was not alone, that there were thousands of people just like me, scattered across the country, paying premiums for years only to be abandoned when they needed help. And I learned about Margaret Chen. Her name appeared in article after article, forum post after forum post. Margaret Chen, disability rights attorney. Margaret Chen, who had argued cases before the Ninth Circuit. Margaret Chen, whose firm had recovered over $200 million for wrongfully denied claimants over the past decade. Margaret Chen, who had never lost a disability insurance case. That claim seemed impossible. I searched for exceptions, for asterisks, for qualifications. I found none. Every case Margaret Chen had taken to verdict had resulted in a win for the claimant. Every single one. Her website was sparse. Just her name, her credentials, and a contact form. No testimonials, no flashy graphics, no promises. Just a photograph of a woman in her mid-50s with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen every trick the insurance industry had ever invented. I filled out the contact form. I described my situation in 3 paragraphs: my condition, the denial, the surveillance. I clicked submit. 3 days later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Mercer, this is Margaret Chen." Her voice was calm, so calm that it almost seemed medicated. But there was something beneath that calm, something that hummed like a live wire buried under snow. "Thank you for calling me back," I said, and I could hear the tremor in my own voice. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I read your submission," she said. "Meridian Insurance Corporation. Dr. Lawrence Pittman's review. Surveillance showing you carrying grocery bags." "Yes." "How many grocery bags?" The question surprised me. "I'm sorry?" "In the surveillance footage, how many bags were you carrying?" I thought back. The letter hadn't specified, but I remembered that day, one of the few times I'd felt well enough to drive to the store myself instead of using a delivery service. "One," I said. "1 bag." It had bread, some vegetables, and a carton of eggs. Maybe 5 pounds total. "And how long did it take you to recover from that exertion?" No one had asked me that. Not the insurance company, not their surveillance team, not Dr. Lawrence Pittman with his 4,000 annual reviews. No one had cared what happened after the camera stopped rolling. "The rest of the day," I said. "I had to ice my wrists and take extra medication. I couldn't make dinner. I ordered delivery and ate it in bed because I couldn't sit at the table." There was a pause. Then Margaret Chen said, "I'd like to take your case, Ms. Mercer." The relief that flooded through me was so intense that I had to sit down. "You would?" Meridian has been on my radar for some time. Their denial rate for long-term disability claims has increased 32% in the past 3 years, while their premium rates have remained stable. Do you know what that means? They're collecting money and not paying it out. They're stealing from people who can't fight back. They're betting that you'll be too sick, too exhausted, or too broke to challenge them. And for most people, that bet pays off. But not for you. "No," Margaret Chen said. "Not for me. I need you to send me every document you have. Your medical records, the denial letter, the surveillance summary, Dr. Pittman's report, your original policy, and any correspondence you've had with Meridian since you filed your claim. I'll review everything and schedule a meeting." "How much do you charge?" "I work on contingency for cases like yours. If we win, I take 30% of the recovery. If we lose, you owe me nothing." "I thought you never lose." Another pause. Then, very quietly, "I don't." I sent her everything that afternoon. 5 days later, I drove to her office, a modest suite on the 4th floor of a professional building downtown. Nothing like the gleaming towers where I imagined insurance company executives plotted their denials. Margaret Chen was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'3", with delicate wrists and narrow shoulders. She wore a charcoal suit without jewelry, and her hair was pulled back in a simple clip. She looked like someone's grandmother, until she opened my file. Her face changed when she began reading. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, more like watching ice form over water. Her features settled into something harder, colder, more focused. "Dr. Pittman reviewed your records on February 28th, she said without looking up. "That was the last day of your surveillance period. He had the surveillance summary before he completed his medical review." "What does that mean?" "It means his review wasn't independent. He knew what conclusion they wanted him to reach before he ever looked at your medical history." She turned pages, making notes in a margin with a pen that moved so quickly it was almost a blur. "Your rheumatologist submitted detailed nerve conduction studies showing significant sensory and motor deficits. Pittman's report dismisses them as within expected variation. Your orthopedic surgeon provided MRI evidence of multi-level disc degeneration with nerve impingement. Pittman's report calls it age-appropriate changes. Your own physician documented that you require assistance with daily living activities. Pittman's report says you have full functional capacity for sedentary work." She looked up at me. "He contradicted every physician who actually examined you. Everyone. Is that illegal?" "It's certainly unethical. Whether it's illegal depends on how good their lawyers are at hiding it." She closed the file. "I have a strategy I'd like to propose. But first, I need you to understand something." I waited. Meridian Insurance Corporation has $47 billion in assets. They have an in-house legal team of over 200 attorneys. They have relationships with every major law firm in this state. They have spent decades perfecting the art of denying claims and defending those denials. They will not settle easily. They will not back down because I send them a strongly worded letter. They will fight. You said you never lose. I don't lose, Margaret Chen agreed. But I also don't take cases I can't win. I need to know, before we proceed, that you're prepared for what this will require. There will be depositions. There will be motions. There may be a trial. This could take 18 months or more. Can you handle that? I thought about my kitchen table, covered with medical bills and past due notices. I thought about the balance in my savings account, which was shrinking every month. I thought about the pain in my hands and the fear that one day they would stop working entirely. Then I thought about that letter, about being called a liar, about being watched through car windows while I was just trying to survive. I can handle anything, I said, if it means making them answer for what they did. Margaret Chen smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was the smile of someone who had just found exactly what she was looking for. Good, she said, because I'm going to make one phone call, and then we're going to watch their entire strategy fall apart. She picked up her desk phone, dialed a number from memory, and waited. I watched her, trying to understand what could possibly change everything with a single call. This is Margaret Chen, she said when someone answered. I need to speak with David Warwick. Tell him it's about Meridian Insurance and the Mercer claim. She was put on hold. We waited in silence, Margaret perfectly still, me trying to control the shaking in my hands. David, she said finally. Yes, it has been a while. I'm calling because I've taken on a new client, Catherine Mercer. Your company denied her long-term disability claim last month. I think we should talk about resolving this before it becomes complicated. She listened. I couldn't hear what the other person was saying, but I watched Margaret's face. It didn't change. I'm aware that's your company's position, she said. I've reviewed the denial letter and Dr. Pittman's report. I've also reviewed the surveillance summary. A pause. Yes, I know you consider that evidence. Here's my concern, David. The surveillance was conducted during the same period that Dr. Pittman was reviewing her records. He had access to that surveillance before he completed his report. Are you prepared to argue in court that his review was independent? Another pause, longer this time. That's what I thought. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because of Dr. Pittman's review volume. 4,812 reviews in the past 12 months, David. That's an average of 13 per day. I'd be curious to see how many of those reviews resulted in claim approvals versus denials. I suspect the ratio would be illuminating. And I suspect a jury would find it illuminating as well. I watched Margaret's eyes. They hadn't blinked. I have one more thing, she said. And this is the thing I need you to take seriously. Ms. Mercer's policy was underwritten by Meridian's subsidiary, Horizon Benefits Administration. Horizon is also the entity that conducted the surveillance and contracted with Dr. Pittman's review company. Do you see where I'm going with this? She waited, then smiled that same small smile. I thought you might. The same corporate entity that collects the premiums is also making the claim decisions, ordering the surveillance, and paying the reviewing physicians. There's no independent oversight anywhere in this process. It's not a review system. It's a denial factory. And I intend to prove it. The person on the other end spoke for a long time. Margaret listened without interrupting. I appreciate that offer, she said finally, but I'm not interested in settling Ms. Mercer's claim in isolation. Here's what I want. Full payment of her claim with interest dating back to the original filing date. Full reimbursement of her out-of-pocket medical expenses incurred during the denial period. And a commitment from Meridian to reform its review process, including an end to the use of surveillance during the claim evaluation period and the implementation of truly independent medical examinations. Another pause. No, I don't expect you to agree to that right now. Take it to your board. Explain to them what discovery is going to look like in this case. Explain that I'm going to subpoena Dr. Pittman's complete review history, every surveillance report Meridian has commissioned in the past 5 years, and the internal communications between your claims department and Horizon Benefits Administration. Then call me back. She hung up. I stared at her. What just happened? I made them nervous, Margaret Chen said. David Warwick is Meridian's general counsel. He's very good at defending individual claim denials because his strategy is always the same. Bury the claimant in paperwork, delay proceedings until they're desperate, then offer a settlement for a fraction of what's owed. It works because most people can't afford to fight. But he's never good when someone attacks the system itself. Individual cases are defensible, patterns aren't, and I just told him I'm going to expose the pattern. Will they settle? Yes, Margaret said. But not yet. First, they'll try to call my bluff. They'll file motions to delay. They'll claim my discovery requests are overbroad. They'll argue that Dr. Pittman's review volume is irrelevant to your specific case. She leaned back in her chair. And then I'm going to show them that I wasn't bluffing. How? She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a thick folder. I've been building a case against Meridian's claim denial practices for 3 years. I have affidavits from 7 other claimants who were denied using the same methodology. Surveillance during the review period, cursory medical examinations by the same small group of reviewing physicians, claim denials that contradicted every treating physician's recommendation. I have statistical analysis showing that claims reviewed by Dr. Pittman are denied at a rate 73% higher than the industry average. I have internal emails from a former Meridian employee describing quotas for claim denials. She set the folder in front of me. Your case isn't just about you, Catherine. It's the final piece of a much larger picture. And when Meridian sees the full picture, they're going to realize that losing one settlement is a lot cheaper than losing their entire business model. I looked at the folder. 3 years of work. 7 other people, just like me, who had been told they were lying about their pain. Why, I asked. Why would you spend 3 years building this? Margaret Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, with an edge of something that might have been old grief. My mother had multiple sclerosis. She was diagnosed at 52, the same year she was finally going to retire from teaching. She had long-term disability insurance through the school district. When she filed her claim, they denied it. Said the documentation didn't support her level of impairment. Said they had video of her walking without assistance. She met my eyes. My mother could walk without assistance for about 20 minutes at a time, on her best days. The rest of the time, she used a wheelchair. But they didn't film the wheelchair days. They only filmed the 20-minute windows when she was trying to pretend she was still the person she used to be. What happened? She appealed. They denied the appeal. She appealed again. They hired lawyers to delay. She ran out of money. She ran out of time. She died in a nursing home that wasn't good enough for her because she couldn't afford the care she deserved. Margaret's face had gone very still. I was 28 years old. I was a second-year associate at a firm that represented insurance companies. I helped defend claims just like hers. She paused. I don't do that anymore. I understood then. This wasn't just a case for Margaret Chen. It was a crusade. It was atonement. It was a war she had been fighting for decades. And I was being given the chance to help her win it. Tell me what you need from me, I said. Over the next 3 months, I learned what it meant to be a plaintiff in a disability insurance case. I gave depositions that lasted 6 hours, answering the same questions phrased different ways, describing my symptoms and limitations in excruciating detail, while Meridian's attorneys tried to catch me in contradictions. I submitted to an independent medical examination, a real one this time, conducted by a physician Margaret had vetted, who spent 3 hours with me and documented everything from my grip strength to my range of motion to the visible tremors in my hands. I provided written descriptions of my daily activities, my medical history, my work history, my finances. I opened my life to strangers who were paid to find reasons not to believe me. And through all of it, Margaret Chen was there. Not hovering, she had other cases, other clients, other battles, but present. She returned my calls within hours. She answered my questions without condescension. She explained every motion, every strategy, every piece of legal maneuvering. Most importantly, she believed me. In a world that had called me a liar, she never once doubted my pain. The break came 4 months after Margaret's initial phone call. I was at home, trying to do the physical therapy exercises my doctor had prescribed, when my phone rang. It was Margaret. How soon can you get to my office? What happened? David Warwick just called. They want to negotiate. I was there in an hour. Margaret was waiting in her conference room with a stack of documents in front of her. They're offering to settle, she said. Full payment of your claim. Every payment you should have received since you filed, plus interest. Coverage of your medical expenses for the past year. And an additional payment for emotional distress. My heart was pounding. How much? $2.3 million. I sat down. My legs wouldn't hold me. I couldn't finish the sentence. That's not all, Margaret said. They're also agreeing to restructure their review process. No more surveillance during active claims evaluation. Independent medical examinations will be conducted by physicians with no financial relationship to Meridian, and Dr. Pittman has been removed from their approved reviewer list. They agreed to all of that? They agreed to consider it as part of the settlement. It will be written into the final agreement. What changed? Why now? Margaret allowed herself that small smile again. I filed for class certification. I asked the court to combine your case with the 7 other cases I've been building.